Imagine you've just moved across the world, leaving behind the city's constant hum, trading glass towers and morning traffic for stillness and wooden floors. The air here feels different, cleaner, quieter, as if holding its breath. The house you've just arrived at is a colonial-style home nestled in a sleepy suburban street. White pillars frame a dark oak door, its brass knocker shaped like a lion's head, tarnished by time. Ivy curls up the stone facade, climbing like forgotten secrets. You slide your key into the lock for the first time. Click. The door creaks open with the sound of old wood giving in. It echoes slightly through the empty hallway, where light spills across checkered tiles. Dust motes float lazily in the warm afternoon sun. The scent is faintly nostalgic, aged paper, dried roses, and something smoky beneath it, like cologne that clings to old jackets. You step inside, half expecting silence. But then, footsteps. Measured. Steady. And before you can call out, he appears at the end of the hallway. A tall figure, composed yet worn, like a monument left out in the rain. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jawline, and eyes that seem carved out of steel. Salt and pepper hair neatly combed back, and a tailored black coat that brushes just above his knees. He stops in front of you, head tilted slightly, the way actors do before delivering a line that doesn't need a second take. "Welcome," he says, voice deep and slow. Then he studies you for a beat longer than feels comfortable. "You know what it's like being a prime minister's kid?" he adds with a half smirk that doesn't reach his eyes. "You never really get to relax." You realize in that moment, this isn't just your new roommate. This is Julian William McMahon. Actor. Icon. Son of a former prime minister. The man who once played gods, demons, surgeons, and villains, and sometimes blurred the line between all four. There's something in the way he speaks, measured, deliberate. As if every word has passed through layers of thought before reaching you. And his presence, it isn't performative. It's lived in. Like the leather-bound books in the hallway, or the old globe near the staircase that's spun through years of dreams and regrets. You try to find your voice. "I didn't know. I keep a low profile," he interrupts gently, almost apologetically, as if fame were a burden one can pack in a box and tuck under the stairs. He gestures toward the living room with a hand that once graced runways from Milan to Manhattan. "Come in," he says. "You'll want to sit for this." You follow him through a house lined with decades of memorabilia. Movie posters, old scripts, half-burned candles, and Polaroids of his younger self, carefree smiles beside faces you recognize from red carpets. You sit. He pours 2 glasses of something golden, whiskey, probably, and hands you one. "I've lived a lot of lives," he says. Actor. Model. Politician's son. Divorced man. Father. Villain. Hero. All of them true, and none of them the whole picture. You nod, not quite sure how to reply. "I suppose you'll find your own story here too," he continues. "This house, it's good at pulling it out of people. You look around. The ticking of an old clock punctuates the silence. Somewhere, a dog barks distantly. It's not just a house. It's a museum of memories, and you've been invited to live inside it. And so it begins. From that moment forward, you share a home with Julian McMahon. Not the man in tabloids or TV interviews, but the one who walks barefoot in a kitchen at 2 a.m., reciting lines under his breath. The one who stares out the window for hours, lost in thought about roles he never took, and lives he might have lived. You're not just living in his house. You're living in the quiet shadow of a man who's seen fame, power, heartbreak, and reinvention, and now lets you into that world, piece by piece. This is your new reality. And you can already tell. It's going to change you. Forever. Julian McMahon didn't just grow up, he was raised in the gaze of a nation. Long before you knew him as the man with the midnight voice and haunting stare, he was a child in tailored suits, walking quietly through the halls of Parliament House in Canberra. His father, Sir William McMahon, served as Prime Minister of Australia during the early 1970s, an era of rigid formality when leaders wore their dignity like armor and their children were expected to reflect the same. Julian, barely 10, learned to bow when spoken to, shake hands with diplomats, and sit still at long dinners beside men who dictated the future of a country. His mother, Lady Sonia McMahon, wasn't merely a political spouse, she was a social force. Tall, elegant, always composed, she wore designer gowns and hosted high society events that blended politics with performance. The cameras loved her. And Julian learned early on, when the flash goes off, your smile better be perfect. That kind of childhood never quite leaves you. He went to Sydney Grammar School, one of the most prestigious private schools in the country. Blazers, discipline, Latin mottos etched into stone walls. There, Julian was quiet but observant. A little different from his peers. Not just because of his family name, but because he seemed to live half a step outside of the present, already imagining something beyond it. He enrolled in the University of Sydney, majoring in law and economics. It was expected, not just by his parents, but by Australia itself. The McMahon name came with a lineage to uphold. But something didn't fit. You ask him one afternoon about it, while sitting on the back patio as the sun dips behind the trees. He sips coffee, eyes far away. I was supposed to be a lawyer, he says. But I couldn't breathe in those lecture halls. Everything felt planned for me. He doesn't smile when he says it. But he's not bitter either. So he left. Quietly. Without permission or applause. And one day, out of nowhere, he showed up on the runways of Milan. It started small, casting calls, long days waiting in lobbies with other young hopefuls. But Julian had something the others didn't, a calm, unreadable face, and the kind of posture you don't teach in school. He walked like a man trained in diplomacy, not fashion. He looked like he didn't need to be looked at, which, ironically, made people stare. London came next. Then New York. He wore Armani, Versace, Calvin Klein. He strutted through cities where no one knew who his father was. And for the first time in his life, that anonymity felt like freedom. You find the old tape one rainy morning, buried in a box labeled Europe '89. It's dusty and almost unwatchable, the VHS skipping and flickering. But there he is, Julian McMahon, walking a narrow Milanese street in a makeshift catwalk, the rain slicking his black coat, hair tousled, jaw tight. The camera lingers on his face. And even then, before the fame, before nip/tuck, before Charmed, before the supervillains and FBI agents, he had that look. That restrained intensity. That stillness before a storm. You glance at Julian sitting nearby, now older, silent, watching the same tape. He chuckles under his breath. They made me walk that runway 3 times. The rain kept messing with the lights. You nod, but you're barely listening. You're watching him, not the one on screen, but the one beside you. And you realize something most people probably never did. Before he was an actor, before he became the man who wore darkness like a well-fitted suit, Julian McMahon was a boy trying to escape a name. And modeling wasn't about fashion. It was about movement. About creating his own frame. And for a brief time, on those runways in cities that didn't care about prime ministers or tabloids, he was just a man walking forward, step by step, into his own story. It's late. Rain taps softly against the windows, and the house is dim, lit only by the flickering glow of the television. You're curled up on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, half scrolling, half browsing, when Julian walks in, barefoot, with a glass of red wine in one hand. He doesn't say anything at first. Just glances at the screen. Too many choices, you mutter, frustrated with the endless digital library. Hundreds of shows. Nothing feels right. He smirks, slow and knowing. Then let me choose, he says, moving to the shelf near the old sound system. There, nestled between art books and vinyl records, is a collection of physical DVDs, some still wrapped, others well worn. He pulls one out. Nip/Tuck, Season 2. He tosses it to you gently. Start with this. You slot it into the player. The screen lights up. A slick opening theme. Fast cuts of Miami's plastic glamour, surgical precision, sweat and seduction. Then, him. You see him appear on screen as Dr. Christian Troy. It's eerie. The Julian beside you, the real one, leans back on the couch, expression unreadable. But on screen, he's electric. Sharp suit, sharper gaze. Every movement calculated, every line delivered with a mix of detached cool and repressed fury. There's something dangerous beneath his charm. Something that doesn't just act, it pressurizes every scene he's in. You glance at Julian in real life. He's watching himself like a stranger would. That role, he says softly, without turning. It earned me a Golden Globe nomination. You nod. But you already knew. The world had watched Nip/Tuck burn its way across the 2000s, redefining what television could be, glossy, messy, psychological, perverse. Then, with a faint smile, he adds, Christian was a dark mirror. Charming, seductive, but always running from emptiness. You wait. There's more behind that sentence. People think villains are fun to play, he continues, voice barely above a whisper. But Christian, he wasn't evil. He was broken. I like characters like that. Characters who wake up alone and don't know why. You let the words settle. Then, after a moment, he reaches for another disc, Charmed, Season 3. You raise an eyebrow. Cole Turner? He grins. Demon lawyer. That one confused fans. He was seductive, powerful, full of conflict. You remember it vividly now, how teenage audiences swooned over Cole's brooding intensity, his doomed romance with Phoebe, the way love and danger danced so closely in every scene he was in. There was something deeply tragic about him. Cole was trying to be good, Julian murmurs, almost to himself. But sometimes, your nature catches up to you. You realize you're not just hearing an actor reflect on old roles. You're hearing a man who, for decades, has carried parts of those characters inside him. Not because he had to, but because he understood them. You ask him what it takes to dive that deep into darkness, and come back out. Julian stares at the screen for a long time. Then, he exhales. Sometimes, you don't come all the way out. His words hang there. You're not sure whether he's talking about the characters or himself. Then he shifts tone, as if shaking off something heavy. But hey, he says, grabbing a third DVD, this one? This was just fun. You look at the cover. Fantastic Four. Dr. Doom, you ask, eyebrows raised. He nods, eyes glinting. The coolest villain I've ever played. Arrogant. Powerful. Completely theatrical. You laugh. You wore armor. He laughs back. And a cape. I mean, come on. Who doesn't want to wear a cape at least once? The mood lifts. But beneath the humor, you catch a glimpse of something else, something weightier. A man who's played monsters and gods, but who, in the silence between takes, carried home pieces of their pain. You finish the wine. The rain keeps falling. The TV screen fades to black. Julian gets up, walks to the window, and stands there for a moment, his silhouette framed by faint lightning. You remember something he once said, almost offhandedly. Acting's not about pretending. It's about revealing things you don't say out loud. And maybe that's why he chooses the roles he does. Not for the fame. Not even for the challenge. But for the chance to put his shadow somewhere they can't hurt him anymore. And you wonder if, in living with these characters, Julian McMahon has become one of them, too. It happens on a quiet Sunday afternoon. The rain has passed, leaving behind a silvery light that filters through gauzy curtains. The house feels still, like it's paused to take a breath. You decide to explore, not out of curiosity exactly, but because something about this house seems to invite discovery. You wander into the living room, where time seems to pool in the corners. Bookshelves line the walls, leather-bound novels, old scripts, political biographies, and paperbacks with cracked spines. A record player rests beside a pile of jazz vinyls. And on the coffee table, lying slightly ajar, is a thick photo album. The leather is worn, the edges frayed, the kind of album that has been opened many times, and always closed a little slower. You sit, hesitating for a moment. Then you open it. The first photo catches you off guard. Julian, much younger, beaming beside Dani Minogue. He's wearing a tuxedo, she's glowing in silver. They look happy, in the way young lovers often do, when they believe the world might finally bend to their hopes. The next page surprises you more. A still from Swinging Safari, a comedic scene with Kylie Minogue, and there's Julian again, mid-laugh, in the middle of an awkward on-screen kiss. You smile. Julian's voice breaks the silence behind you. "That was a weird day," he says, stepping into the room, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "It's strange, kissing someone you've known forever, in front of 30 crew members and a boom mic." You close the album gently. "Dani?" you ask, carefully. He hands you a mug and sinks into the armchair across from you. His gaze drifts toward the fireplace. "My first marriage," he says. "Didn't stand a chance." He pauses. "Not because we didn't care about each other. We did. But my mother, she had a presence. Dominant. Sophisticated. Overbearing, if I'm honest." You've read about Lady Sonia McMahon before, her elegant public life, her daring sense of style, her social power in both political and celebrity circles. But hearing Julian speak of her like this, softly, with both reverence and weariness, adds a new shade to the picture. "She didn't like Dani," he says, eyes distant. "Said she wasn't the right kind of woman for a McMahon." There's no bitterness in his tone, just resignation. A wound that's long healed, but left a mark. He shifts the album toward you and flips a few pages forward. "This was Brooke," he says, pointing to a photo of a beach day, sunlight, ocean spray, and a bright-eyed woman with a surfer's energy. You recognize her instantly, Brooke Burns, the Baywatch star. "And that little one," he adds, smiling softly, "is Madison. My daughter. She's around 5 in the picture, wearing a pink swimsuit and oversized sunglasses, grinning with pure joy. Julian is crouched beside her, sunburned and laughing. Madison's in her 20s now," he says. "Beach volleyball. Fierce serve. Fiercer will." He seems proud, but also distant, like a father who's had to watch parts of his daughter's life unfold from the sidelines. Then he stands, walks toward a low shelf near the fireplace, and picks up a book. You recognize it immediately. Bedtime for Sarah Sullivan. The edges are soft with age, the corners bent, the cover a warm watercolor painting of a little girl holding a glowing star. "My wife, Kelly, wrote this," he says, handing it to you. She writes children's books, gentle ones, full of wonder and stillness. You open the first page, there's a dedication scrawled in careful handwriting, to every child who feels different, and every adult who forgot how to dream. Kelly grounds me, Julian says. She's not from this world, TV, fame, red carpets. She writes, she gardens, she bakes bread without measuring anything. You glance around the room again. You begin to notice the quiet details you'd missed before. A typewriter near the window. A shelf of children's books translated into multiple languages. A pressed flower in a frame. This house, it isn't just filled with stories of drama and spotlight. It's full of healing, of soft afternoons, of years spent stitching wounds closed in quiet ways. People think my life is one long series of dramatic arcs, Julian says, almost laughing. TV roles, tabloids, marriages, divorces. But this is the real script. A quieter one. Still full of love. Still worth telling. And in that moment, you understand something simple, but profound. The most interesting things about Julian McMahon were never on screen. They were in the chapters between, the ones most people never get to read. Evenings in the house have a rhythm. By now, you know the pattern. The rustle of a newspaper around 5 p.m., the clink of ice into a glass shortly after. The sound of footsteps pacing, slow, deliberate, as Julian moves through rooms filled with decades of memory. The television is almost always on, but the volume is low. He doesn't really watch for entertainment. It's more like he's listening to echoes of his past. One night, you walk into the den and find him sitting alone, the glow of the TV painting his face in quiet blues. On screen, FBI, Most Wanted. Julian is there, playing Jess LaCroix, the quiet, brooding team leader with a soldier's presence and a father's sorrow. He doesn't look away from the screen when he speaks. That was Jess LaCroix, he says softly, as if introducing a version of himself you haven't met yet. Left after season 3. Needed creative space. You don't press for more. But later, over dinner, he tells you. It wasn't about ego. I just needed silence. That show took a lot out of me. It was good work. Honest work. But grief, it was always in the script. And sometimes, I think, it started bleeding into me. You nod. Because you've seen it too, the way he sometimes carries silence like a second skin. As if there are parts of him that never quite came back from certain roles. He tells you something else that night, quietly, like a secret he doesn't usually share. After Pierce Brosnan stepped down, they approached me. James Bond. You blink. You could have been Bond? He shrugs. Maybe. I said no. There's a pause. You want to ask why, but something in his expression suggests he's still answering that question for himself. It's not that I didn't want it, he finally says. It's that I didn't need it. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to belong to something that owned every part of me. You think about what kind of world that would have been. Julian McMahon as 007. The tuxedo would have fit. The presence, the voice, the effortless threat beneath the charm, all of it already lives in him. But maybe the world already demanded too much from him. Maybe he chose freedom over global fame. And maybe that's why he still surprises you. Like the time you found him in the library, slouched in the armchair by the window, a script in hand. You almost didn't notice the tears sliding down his cheek, silent, quick, wiped away before it could stain the page. You asked if he was all right. He nodded, but didn't look up. Curious, you later glance at the script lying face down on the side table. The Residence. A Netflix drama set in the shadows of Washington, D.C. Julian's role, Prime Minister Stephen Roose. The script is heavy. Not just in content, but in spirit. Roose is a man haunted by past decisions, trying to balance legacy with morality. You flip through pages of dense monologues, political tension, and quiet family scenes that carry the weight of suppressed grief. You understand now why Julian had cried. There's a scene, page 47, where Roose stands alone in his childhood home, holding a photo of his late father. He whispers a line, not meant for anyone else. I spent my life trying to escape your shadow. And now that you're gone, all I want is to stand in it one more time. It doesn't take much to connect the dots. Julian playing a prime minister. A son. A man trying to find clarity beneath the pressure of history. It's not a performance. It's a reflection. And in this role, one that might never become a household favorite, one that won't bring blockbuster attention, Julian McMahon delivers something that might be the most true he's ever been on screen. You think about all the moments that led here. The runway lights of Milan. The demons and surgeons. The decision to turn down Bond. The ache behind characters with hidden wounds. And now, a role that feels like a full circle. A fictional prime minister. Played by the son of a real one. A role that isn't about glory, but about coming home. And maybe that's what the final act really is, not applause, not fame, not headlines. But honesty. A man reading scripts that cut too close. Choosing silence over spectacle. Living in a house where the loudest sound is often his own breath. You watch him from across the room. Julian McMahon, no longer trying to be anyone else. Just a man writing his last chapters on his own terms. And somehow, that's the most powerful role of all. It's your last night in the house. The bags are packed. The books you borrowed have been returned to their rightful places. The silence in the hallway feels different now, more aware, more final. The air carries that quiet anticipation that always comes with goodbyes you're not quite ready for. Julian finds you standing by the front window, looking out at the garden bathed in silver moonlight. He doesn't say anything at first, just watches you the way he often does, without urgency, with that unshakable stillness that feels both calming and haunted. Then, softly, "Come with me." He leads you through the darkened living room, past the bookshelf that smells faintly of old leather and coffee, through the back doors, and out onto the balcony. The night is cool, crisp. The stars are faint, dimmed by city glow, but they're there, scattered like quiet witnesses. Julian leans on the railing. He doesn't look at you when he speaks. You know, he begins, I used to think becoming someone was the point. A name, a reputation, a role people recognized. There's a pause. But over time, I realized, becoming yourself, that's the real story. That's the one no one else can write for you. You say nothing. The words are too still to interrupt. He glances at you. You've got something most people don't. You listen. You see. That's rare. He slips a hand into his coat pocket and pulls out a small black notebook, worn, soft, the leather faded from years of being carried, opened, closed, and carried again. He holds it out to you. This, he says, isn't a keepsake. It's a conversation between the person I was and the one I never had the courage to be. You take it gently, the weight of it heavier than its size suggests. Inside, you find the first page scrawled in rough pen. For Madison. For anyone who's ever lived with ghosts. There are poems, fragmented, honest, full of longing. Some about fatherhood, others about fear. There are lines about standing on red carpets while feeling completely invisible. A letter to his daughter, unmailed. A monologue he wrote at 2 a.m. after a panic attack in a hotel room in Berlin. And scripts. Half-finished scenes from stories that never made it past his desk. One about an aging stuntman. Another about a prime minister who pretends to be senile to escape responsibility. All of them personal. None of them polished. You look up, overwhelmed. Julian is still watching the sky. You can be anything, he says quietly. A model. An actor. A politician. But never forget who you are underneath all that. He looks at you now, really looks at you. And if the world ever tells you that your voice is too quiet, just remember, people like us, we don't shout a beat. But our words can still echo. You nod. Not because you know what to say, but because some truths don't require replies. Only reverence. The night wraps around the balcony like a soft cloak. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks, and a plane cuts silently across the stars. You both stand there, two people from different worlds, linked by something quieter than fame, shared understanding. Eventually, Julian pushes off the railing and straightens. You'll do fine, he says, heading back inside. You're not pretending. That's rare in this business, or any. And just like that, he's gone. The sliding door clicks shut. You're alone again, but not empty. You sit for a while longer with the notebook in your lap. The pages are alive with things unsaid. With truths too delicate for cameras. With a man's legacy not defined by awards, but by the courage to feel deeply and share it. In the morning, you'll leave the house. The walls will remain, the photo albums and scripts will stay where they belong. But you'll carry something else with you, a glimpse into the soul of a man the world thought they knew, and the pages that prove otherwise. Thank you, Julian McMahon, for the broken heroes and elegant villains, for the silences that said more than monologues, for the reminder that not all scripts are written for screens. Some live in the quiet between people brave enough to tell the truth. And above all, thank you for showing that in a world of masks and roles, being yourself is the bravest role of all.